You have no right to be here. I have every right. You have no right to suggest otherwise. You are a senator and I am a consul. Please try to recall the order in the chain of command. There is no chain of command. This empire is a democracy. We were elected and you were not. When you buy the votes, it all amounts to the same thing though, eh? Sorry to say it does not. Your power is honorary, okay? You are a general primarily, and your consulship is offered to you out of respect for your work and your family history. But you should not be here. You should not interfere with the process now that it is finally working again. For whom is it working? You? Rome has been restored. The empire is being regrown, and the old order is coming to terms with the new. We are about to see the beginning of a new age of peace. Oh, Senator, haven't you heard? Don't you ever wonder where the Senate's legions have got themselves off to? Keeping our borders safe, just like you were meant to watch over Britannia and leave us in peace. Well, I have instead chosen to join you in war, for your borders have been opening, and through them stream the Hunnic war hosts. What? It's all true. You'll hear of it soon enough. And poor General Tullus seems to have underestimated them. Might even hear of his death in the same letter that tells of the invasion. I don't quite know if you're being serious. Very serious. And that, my good friend, is why I would advise you to not raise any more fuss about me and my legions coming to stay. Hello and welcome back to Fields of Mars. In the previous episode we saw Aurelianus giving up territory to rebels in order to create a buffer state against the Huns to stop their advance, a move that actually proved to be quite successful. And we even managed to isolate Attila himself stuck behind that buffer zone, so we could finally get a battle with him on good terms, our testudo stopping most of the enemy's long-range firepower, while our spearmen making quick work of their mostly cavalry-based army. Of course, Attila surviving the battle. Our attempts to stop a build-up of an invasion near Thracia pretty much failed right away, as they actually caused the forces to move deeper into our territory. But before we could deal with them, we saw a big invasion coming from the Huns, hitting Tullus, who himself was hoping to invade the Hunnic territory. He had to just flee from the enemy's overwhelming strength, but they've got him cornered. Now he goes into ambush stance in an attempt to simply evade them before his force is destroyed. One thing that may or may not help out Tullus here is the fact that Julianus' arrival brings more troops over near to where the Huns are stationed. Of course, his army completely unable to stop these Hun armies if they actually came to attack him, but I decided that he believes otherwise, so he makes an attrition-heavy march up to the border, where he will now sit himself in the settlement there, recruit a few crossbows to make his force a tiny bit more suitable, and see what happens. And what happens is actually quite interesting. The Huns, on both of their battlefronts, seem to fall back, leaving only one army trapping Tullus there on the peninsula, and not even a full army at that. And then Aaron, the eastern faction that forms a large part of the invasion force currently coming into Thracia, suddenly asks for a peace treaty. And this is incredible, because not only can we get some money off them for doing this, but this takes the pressure off us a lot. So now that the Huns have fallen back, and these guys' armies are going to be removed from the fight with Constans, basically we've suddenly been given all this breathing room, which we can now use to make the potential invasions coming from both directions now a lot less threatening by finally organising ourselves, or possibly even counter-attacking. So that was a turn of luck. I have no idea what made the AI make both of those decisions, but they're very much in our favour. One thing I was curious about is, did the Huns know that Tullus was here? I didn't see a message saying that his army had been discovered. It usually tells you if your ambush has been rustled. So I don't really know. They seem to have not known he was there, but they still left an army fortified there as if they were planning on finding him at some point. So I don't really know what happened here, but what we can do is bring Julianus over. I thought we would have the Huns trapped there, but of course We get another of those crazy retreats, and they just somehow get away with it. So I thought we were going to turn the tables on the Huns there by overwhelming them when they were trapped, but it didn't happen. But at least Tullus and Julianus can now establish a defensive line, and I'm sure Julianus is going to make Tullus very sure that it was he who saved Tullus from destruction there by arriving just in time. Now in the next turn, with the line now established up there, I noticed the Huns seemed to be coming back towards Aurelianus, who was just sitting at Serdica waiting for the enemy to attack. He has no hope to go on an offensive himself, and the settlement to the north, Vermacium I think it's called, is basically impossible to defend, so we're just leaving it out there and seeing if the Huns will go for it. Now, looking at the Arian forces currently building at Nicomedia, with Aaron taken out of this eastern invasion plan, I realise we have the chance to actually counterattack and try and just get rid of these guys before anyone else shows up to make sure the enemy is still locally weak. And what we can actually do is the classic siege trick. We can have Septimus bring his army of cavalry to besiege the settlement. So now that that siege is going, the armies in the settlement, the garrison and the army already inside the settlement there, will now not be able to take part in this fight that Constans is going to start by sneaking around the outside of the settlement. He has tons of movement points thanks to his high level, so he can just about make this move and start this battle, but it doesn't actually work as I thought it would, because apparently that army inside was garrisoned technically into the docks rather than the settlement, and that stops the weird thing where sieges stop them going out through the sea route from taking effect. You could argue that if there are docks in the settlement, then besieging it should always still allow the army to leave, which it does on the campaign map, but whatever, that's how it works, and it's not how I thought it would work. So that means this battle is going to be harder than expected, but it's still balanced, and we do need to fight it, because if we don't, then it's just going to be this army plus a couple of extra cavalry against the same enemy force, but not split up land and sea and with the garrison added in. So probably best to try and win this, but it's actually going to be a little bit of a challenge. The enemy army in front of us has onagers, so we need to attack as quickly as possible. Plus, the sudden arrival of all these ships from the north side of the map means they're going to be landing forces on our flank, so we need to win this fight quickly. But making it even worse is the fact that the cavalry from the enemy's second army get their advanced deployment and actually come in behind us. So suddenly we're facing an attack on three sides. We need to push forwards and destroy the first army as quickly as possible in order to prevent us from being at a real strategic disadvantage to the enemy. I'm using my cavalry there to try and draw onager fire while the rest of my army advances. They're moving up archers though to shoot the cav as well, and they have three sets of onagers, which is really too much to micro away from, especially if they're all firing at different times, so it's not being very effective. We're taking a pounding. We're going to have to just make the really dangerous advance and try and close out this first army before anything goes wrong. The mutt had a single task. I gave him the best life this world has to offer, and still he has grown into a wilted plant that even these Aryan vagrants can outsmart. Is this the curse of any Roman raised in the great city? Perhaps it is cursed to produce men of inferior quality. We should have all our officers train in frozen Caledonia, for it makes one suddenly quite sensible. Well, let's make the best of it. If they'll bring all they have to surround us, we'll simply destroy their whole army from the inside. Order a charge into their main force, move the flanking companies to the rearguard, and have the auxilia disable those onagers. As for the archers, let the Germans face them. And let Septimus explain the loss of all true Romans this day. The cavalry out in front of the army rush forward to engage the enemy's archers, both to stop them firing and in theory to defeat them, but these archers are actually pretty good in melee and are supported by their own cav, so that is not going to last long. Plus, our army is not advancing quickly enough to escape from the cavalry rear attack now coming up. Lots of them are horse archers, so they'll start raining arrows into the backs of our troops. We also need to try and defeat the enemy's onagers, who are pounding our men right now. The cavalry sent to do that have been stuck on the enemy's cavalry. Luckily for us, those enemy cavalry aren't very good, so we will be able to hack through them and then continue our advance soon enough. This unit of Matiarii, currently heading to support one of our units on the right flank, is going to have a bad day because the unit of heavy cavalry comes in to attack it from the flank and rear. It's getting demolished. I quickly ordered them to try and run away. We need to secure the rear of our army as soon as possible. I'm doing that by folding in both flanks backwards, but they're arriving too late. They did just about arrive in time though to actually catch this unit and cause them to stop pursuing the Matiarii, so that worked out well enough. But another unit's already been defeated, just delaying the enemy here, attacking on our right. The spearmen who were there to fight cavalry are now fighting the cavalry to our rear, and themselves are being actually really heavily damaged by the enemy's archers who are firing at them from further back. Meanwhile, the infantry engagement has got started. The enemy has some pretty good infantry in this fight, and in our centre in particular we have the weaker infantry, the cohort auxilia, who are going to struggle against these elite swordsmen from the enemy. Constans also theoretically in trouble, but it seems that the gods are with him today because the onagers are all firing at him, but they're all missing. They're all falling just short of where he's standing, so somehow he is avoiding the massive damage he should be taking right now. And finally we are able to get the cavalry round to the back of the enemy's army to disable those onagers, just going to ride among them and among the enemy's archers to try and technically get them all into a melee so they'll stop firing, but we didn't get enough of them, so more archers will still be shooting our men. They also sent some swordsmen forward, originally to outflank the enemy's infantry, but they ended up meeting the enemy's general back here, so I left them to fight that engagement, hoping we might be able to take him out there in isolation. Our spearmen at the back have managed to defeat one unit of enemy cavalry, but they've lost most of their men to the horse archers that were shooting them the whole time, so now they're going to drop down into a defensive testudo. They can effectively defeat the horse archers by now just sitting here. They're too weak to really participate in the battle, but by sitting there and doing nothing, they'll take those horse archers out of the fight by acting as a distraction. These cohort auxilia were ready to rear attack all of these enemy swordsmen, but we had to call that off because more cavalry were coming in to rear attack our main line, so we just about managed to stop them before that was a disaster. But we did manage to kill their general out there in the field, so that is excellent news. Already we start to see some units routing because of that. These archers who are fighting our cavalry are proving very hard to take down. I believe the enemy archers are some of the mixed class type units where they're also melee units. They pull out a sword and shield when you get close to them, so our cavalry, who aren't actually very good, are having a really hard time taking them out, so we're going to have to send in infantry to finish that fight off. Back at the main fight, we need to try and surround the enemy and now exploit the fact that they don't have a general, so they'll have the morale debuff, and we do have the troops to get the surround going because the enemy are so bunched up, and our legionaries will start inflicting damage on the enemy here, and basically we do see all of those forces rout and start to leave, and immediately we're going to have to turn our army because their second force is about to arrive. You can see the balance bar still equal despite all the work we've done because of this second army about to face us, so we need to basically sit in testudo while our men form up and just take all of the enemy's arrows as their archers came up early. They also sent in this siege ship crew, which is a terrible idea. It can in theory inflict morale shocks, and it does seem to get a flank attack on our unit here, but of course it's going to be defeated pretty much instantly. They are useful, things like siege ships crews, because they inflict the same morale shock as any other unit if you use them for a rear attack despite their lack of strength, so they can make a big impact on a battle in the right circumstances. Now we need to advance forwards and surround the enemy's infantry, but we can't right now because they have so many ranged units back there that anyone who moves forwards or breaks from testudo will just be annihilated immediately. So we're just going to throw in everything we have in terms of fast cavalry units and even skirmishers to just try and get these guys moving at least, or perhaps even into melee, so that they won't be firing, and that's going to free up the opportunity for us to start bringing troops like this half-dead spear cohort around to commence a rear attacks, which we desperately need, especially here on the right flank of this main engagement where the enemy swordsmen are destroying our spearmen quite quickly. I'm trying to get my archers to shoot into the enemy's blob as well, but the line of sights aren't quite there, so really we're going to have to rely on morale to get through the enemy here because we're too tired and we're out of ammunition on all of our best units. We're basically going to need to not defeat the enemy, especially in the case of these archers who are just proving impossible to actually bring down in terms of man-to-man fighting, even with legionaries going in to fight them. Perhaps it's just because our men are so tired we just can't hack through these guys. So I ended up bringing Constans onto the rear of the enemy's main blob, and that actually caused a lot of these troops to start routing away, and this is where our victory is going to begin finally. We can start hacking through the guys who are routing, and now we'll outnumber the guys still fighting and completely surround them as well with everything there, everything we have left at least. The archers at the back just going to fight on. You can see we haven't really done much damage to them, but they don't want to continue fighting this fight. We're going to be able to win this on morale alone. Off they go, and so goes the rest of the enemy army back here. They weren't actually completely surrounded in the end, so they are going to be able to escape there and didn't take really big losses in this rout. You can see a nice column going to get away. Our troops probably too tired to actually chase them, but that's the end of the battle anyway. It was a close victory. Expected this whole battle to be a chance to easily take down one of the isolated armies. Ended up being a battle where, with difficulty, we've basically taken down everything here. From the results, you can see the enemy's first army in really bad condition, our army only losing one unit, the mercenary Germanic Cav, but the rest of the army in terrible condition in terms of its troop count, so although we've still got our units, we can't really do anything with them. The enemy's second army is in a similar condition to our army, beaten up, but with its units intact. So with that done, the question was, what impact does that have on the siege situation? And the answer was that it makes it extremely one-sided. Now, I thought the balance bar was actually being unfair to the enemy. They do have their garrison army, which is about half a stack, and the remnants of that army in the docks are still nothing to be sniffed at in terms of its infantry quality. But still, I'm going to go with this balance bar and just auto-resolve everything here out of existence using a Septimus to lead this attack, and he seems to take pretty hefty losses on his own troops doing this, so perhaps he was very engaged in this battle. But anyway, with that done, it means we have to make a decision about Nicomedia, because we could raise it just to stop the enemy from threatening us from this position again, but we made all this effort to get here, so maybe we should capture it and try and use it as a base against the enemy. These lands are not ours to burn, father. Oh no? Then what was that battle for? Thanks to you, Pontus has claim to these lands, and the local officials want independence as an ally of Rome. This isn't some barbarian village beyond our border. This is the kind of town we're meant to be saving. We've saved all we need to save. Anything else is a liability. If you'd studied properly, you would see that this position is impossible to hold. But we have to try. Otherwise, what's the point of being here? Okay, you think you're right. I get that. Let's see the truth of it. Let the defense of these people be your responsibility. You will find that to be out here with the vile Easterners is not worth any amount of adoration, nor is it worth the price in soldiers. So we are going to occupy the settlement, take the risk and take the challenge of keeping a little foothold in Anatolia, from which we may be able to finally make some gains against the Sassanids by actually attacking some of the local settlements and taking the fight away from Thracia. We can also finish off the survivors from Aria. I thought the reinforcements from the town might come in here to help, but even without them, Constans will quickly delete that army, so everything is cleared up. But of course, just like every time we set foot anywhere near the Sassanids, multiple armies just appear from nowhere to come with a counter-attack. Now the balance bar's looking okay, but the enemy's army composition looks very strong actually. Lots of crossbow cav of course, lots of cataphracts of course, elephants, catapults, more crossbow cav in this second army, and various types of infantry, some good, some bad. Now we've certainly beaten armies of this kind before, but those times we actually used a fort in order to do it, and the fort provided us with so much of a defensive advantage that I was very interested to see what actually happened if we took this same scenario into a regular field battle. Septimus will be able to reinforce Constans and his half-dead army here, and we've even got a few ships and basically destroyed units from the town garrison to help out. Those ships were able to actually take part because lots of them were siege ships, and they're able to just chip away at the edge of the enemy army as they advanced there. So here's Constans's army set up right at the back of the map on this little hill with our onagers right just touching the line where they can sneakily fire away at the enemy's advancing forces. I could actually have set up on the hill over to the north of my current position where my cavalry are, but I decided to be a little bit sporting because that would be completely corner camping to be up there, and I am already exploiting the red line of death to defend my rear flank. Now Septimus and all of his cavalry are currently moving out onto our right. I was planning to let the enemy attack Constans and then Septimus would sweep round to the rear, but you can see from the vectors of all their cavalry, they're actually just going to go straight for Septimus there on our right. And on our left, the enemy are commencing attack with cataphracts. They have so much cavalry in this army, the enemy do, that even with loads of cavalry going to counter our cav, they have plenty still to make the main attack. Now they also have their elephants advancing near the front of their army, and the elephants, although not doing much damage, they're keeping me out of testudo because I need my front line to be able to throw their javelins. You're not allowed to throw javelins if you're in a testudo formation, so my men are going to be taking extra damage from ranged fire right now until we can remove the threat of the elephants. I don't want them to just come and smash through our front line, testudo or not. Luckily, there's the javelin throw, and basically all of that first group of elephants is going to go down. They are super weak against javelins, so we are going to be able to stop them because of that. But the cavalry situation on our right getting very dangerous very quickly. Septimus found himself caught in the middle of attacks from all sides, plus crossbow, cav and horse archers raining arrows on everything. I tried to get Septimus out, but he is going to be the victim of the classic Attila problem. Units do not have melee defense while they are moving, so his attempts to leave the fight causes basically all of his unit to be destroyed. He himself is still alive along with a few companions, and I'm going to try and force him out of the fight because they are getting drawn back in, and they're just going to make a run for our main line. Just 20 men left from our super expensive Praetorian Guard cavalry, which haven't really made any impact in the battle for their large expense. They cost the same amount as about 5 units of legionaries. Really a waste to have lost them like that. The enemy's cavalry advantage just overwhelming us there. Meanwhile, in the center of the battlefield, the enemy's infantry pressing against ours. They have a giant numerical advantage. Plus, of course, they'll have their ranged units supporting them, so it's going to make that actually go okay for the enemy. And they're also having a relatively easy time attacking our left. We did manage to catch one of their horse arch units up against the red line of death. A couple of half-dead units of Equite Auxilia will go into that melee. Not a melee they can necessarily win, though. And we also lost a unit of cavalry. They tried to make a rear attack on some of their skirmishers, but of course they all just turned around and annihilated my cavalry. Again, fruitless to try such things. Our cavalry from Septimus's army are now going to be all but destroyed. Just him and a few of his guards will remain, now adding their morale aura to the main battle at the very least. Our skirmishers here are all off fire at will, because I realised the friendly fire they would inflict in this battle would just be too much to bear, so they're just trying to stay safe and look for targets that are far away that I can individually micro them onto. The front line not looking very good though right now. We've basically just got a handful of men defending against the enemy, keeping them locked in place, but our units are on the verge of complete annihilation. Here on the left, the units were on the verge of annihilation even when the fight started. This is the garrison from the town, so really it is just little groups of 6 or 7 men being forced to fight entire units of enemy cataphracts here. It is not good at all. Back on the right, the enemy's crossbow cav and archer cav, now done killing all of our cavalry, are going to switch onto our main battle line. And here things are going to be okay. We're just going to use the testudos to try and absorb all that fire, and the enemy going to inflict nice amounts of friendly fire on their own attacking infantry units, so that's all good. Constans in trouble as the enemy's ranged units in the center have now spotted him, decided to attack his unit, and they are not particularly resistant to such attacks, so they're taking losses very quickly. He needs to move and try and get himself into a testudo formation, but he can't do it. The losses he's taken are coming in too rapidly. He lost about 30 men to a single volley, and seeing that, I ordered him to withdraw, realizing that with only about 30 men left, he might be just seconds away from being killed. Luckily, because we're near the edge of the battlefield, he can actually leave really quickly and avoid the next volley. But that, of course, means now it's up to just Septimus to take command of this battle, something he is not at all qualified to do, but he's going to have to. Is he wounded? Where is he going? He appears to be taking the chance to retreat, sir. I know that. I just thought he might have an excuse. This is the worst time. We need to take control of this battle. Agreed, sir. Wait here. I'm going to bring him back. You can't, sir. The lines are fragile. They need a leader here and now. I'm not their leader. I'm just a damn city guard commander. With respect, that is not true as of now, General. Everyone, Father has been wounded. That is why he withdraws, but his plan is near completion. Fight with me and seize victory. Our left flank is in terrible condition. Now I'm having to send the Matiari in to fight in melee with the enemy's cataphracts. That's barely doing anything, and the cataphracts are just smashing through. Now going to hit our archers as well, and of course come around the back of our front line. If it can even be said that we still have a front line, we have a handful of men trying to fight with all the enemy's melee infantry and not doing very well. Septimus is going to have to move himself onto the left to actually do battle with those cataphracts, but at a critical moment the enemy's general dies somewhere in the central melee, and that's going to be very important. We can see units will start to shatter all across the battlefield and really ease the pressure up on us, and we can see the balance bar even starting to shift into our favour now. On the right here, we're just sitting behind our shields and letting the enemy's crossbow cav and archer cav be distracted away from the main fight. They're not doing any damage to us there, so this is giving us a chance to clear up the rest of the battlefield without taking more extreme losses from that fire. The enemy probably do still have an advantage in terms of melee attackers, but all of their melee units are now just leaving, so that's going to turn things around. We basically just have our archers here left to use, and a tiny handful of cohort auxilia who are going to have to line themselves up because the enemy's cataphracts didn't rout locally, one unit of cataphracts that is, so it's going to be up to these auxilia and the archers to try and bring them down. Neither unit particularly good at doing it, and the cataphracts are going to come in for another attack. They're in wedge formation and they are just going to charge this line of about 50 cohort auxilia. This is not going to be nice. They'll break right through such a small line, killing the majority of them with this attack. They probably could have gone all the way through to our archers, but they're going to get stuck into this melee now, and the archers will now provide the fire support we need to actually kill this unit, because they will be able to hit enemies in the rear now, and a couple of losses causes them to break thanks to their low morale. But we did lose basically the entire cohort auxilia unit in just a few moments there. But this battle's over, so basically the entire battle line on both sides has disappeared. We just have part of our right flank now standing against the enemy's ranged cav. Most of the ranged cav actually withdrew apart from one unit, so I just had to advance some archers to give them a volley, and the extra losses that inflicted on them caused them to leave. And that was the end of the battle, and seemingly by the power of the gods, this tree just sets fire as soon as the battle ends among our ranks. So I'm sure many of our troops are going to interpret that as a sign, perhaps as a sign that we are being blessed by the gods and they've given us victory, or perhaps the other way around, perhaps this is a warning about the fact that Constans fled the field during this battle. Either way, it's a Pyrrhic victory. We lost basically everything, but so did the enemy. So we'll take a look at the battle results, and they're not particularly pretty. With most of our high-level units, the legionaries, being actually fully defeated there, it means our army is going to be substantially weaker from now on, because we can't re-recruit those units, at least not anywhere nearby. We'll have to go back to the Western Mediterranean to do that. The enemy army is also looking in terrible condition, but really their units are going to be more replaceable, so perhaps really the enemy have come off better from this. And I was just noting the kills across various units. The enemy's crossbow cav, of course, getting tons of kills as usual. Septimus's army we just saw there, also completely wrecked, losing basically everything. Not good at all. So our fighting capacity in this area has been reduced to basically zero, although we have won the battle and held on to the settlement that we took, so perhaps in the long term this will prove to actually give us some form of an advantage. Now after the Sassanid turn, of course, comes the Hun turn, and I was very anxious to see what they were going to do, because we've seen some of their stacks moving up near Aurelianus, and this turn they basically just move a little bit closer, but still don't actually make an attack. I wonder if it's that rebel army there is creating a zone of control blockage and they can't actually attack us right now. Whatever's happening, it's still looking bad, but at least the destruction of our territories and our borders is happening very slowly out there, if it is even happening at all. Now though, we get another attack from the east. It's Macran this time, coming with half a stack, this time to attack Nicomedia, the settlement itself. Septimus is inside with a few cavalrymen, probably not enough to really hold it, but of course Constans' army can come in to reinforce, giving us a pretty decent looking balance bar. The only problem, as you might have seen, is that Constans isn't in the army, and there's a couple of Arya agents standing next to his army, so that means that something bad has happened, although we can't find out what it is until after this battle and until the next turn starts. So we are going to have to fight this one. We do have that advantage on the balance bar, and auto-resolve could be possible, but I definitely didn't want to lose any more of my valuable units, so I wanted to micromanage this. Plus, I thought this is probably another battle that's going to be harder than it looks, considering our very weak state. We'll have to see what happens next time. For all their desire to plunder the Empire, the Huns seem to have vastly inflated ideas of the difficulty of doing so. The unexpected defeat of their king Attila had struck a measure of apprehension into all of the horde's lesser generals. Retreats made by Roman forces were mistaken for feints or traps, and towns left undefended were equally suspected of trickery. Thus their invasion seemed to be voluntarily halted to afford more time to assess their foe, watching for a chance to catch the Romans in the open. The Romans themselves were preparing for the worst, knowing that in truth they could not stop the full strength of the Huns were they only to apply it to a single point in their defences. For now, though, Roman luck was holding. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. So we'll see more consequences from Constans' little expedition into Nicomedia, and of course we'll be keeping an eye on what the Huns have planned in the next episode of Fields of Mars.